Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Project Barakah podcast. I'm here with my brother Ustad Mumin and my brother Ustad Ibrahim. Welcome. We've got a topic today that we thought was on our minds. I think we say it enough behind the scenes as teachers of many madrasa students. You actually teach in two different madrasas and you teach in a school and a madrasa. So there's a dearth of experience. Is it dearth or girth? Which one is it? Dearth. There's a dearth of experience. I'm trying to work out which word is which. It's that sort of day. So there's a dearth of experience between us, I think, in dealing with youngsters and youth. And also, I think within all three of us, we have youth dawah experience as well. That we weren't always in madrasas and we weren't always in schools. We were just dealing with young people. And the topic is the dopamine generation, right? And the reason why we wanted to discuss this is because we always see that meme, all right? The meme keeps changing. They've now made, they use pictures from Star Wars to Lego Land or whatever, but it's always like hard times causes strong people, right? And strong people create easy times and easy times creates weak people, right? And whenever I look at that meme, yeah, with all of its iterations, right, you can always think to yourself that could be interrupted easily. That could easily be interrupted because surely hard times are harder, isn't it? Hard times are harder for you to try to build and develop things and move forward and progress as a Muslim, as a community, as a family. Why would it be the case that easy times are the reasons why we suffer the most? Why on earth would we suffer more because things are easy, right? And, you know, we look at this generation and sometimes people our age, and I would say that we, broadly speaking, count as, you know, the generations are split up now into, isn't it, into millennials, Gen Z, was it Gen Alpha? God help Gen Beta. Yeah. Imagine being cool, owning up to, I'm Generation Beta. Oh my Lord. But that's roughly, who counts as Gen Z? Millennials.
Millennials, I think it's from 1980s, roughly. Right. 1980s to 1995. So,
97.
Yeah.
Gen Z starts in 97.
So you count as a millennial, I count as a millennial, right? Within that scope. Is there some ikhtilaf on what?
I'm Gen Z.
Lord help us, man. I don't think you like that term. No, I have something tells me.
Well, I don't operate like a Gen Z, so I'm not too fussed about the fact that I was born in.
You're a timeless antique. He's like an antique.
I think I'm a boomer in a Gen Z person's body or something like that. I was born in Gen Z, but I don't want to say anything.
You identify as a millennial.
I identify as a millennial, sure.
So look, this is roughly what it is. We're millennials. We deal with Gen Z, and we're probably having children that are considered Gen Alpha, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your kids will be considered Gen Alpha, or not?
Well, I'm losing track of the iterations now. So what Gen Alpha is the current.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so they should.
Gen Z, my son would count as Gen Alpha. Would you count as Gen Alpha?
Gen Z.
Oh, he's Gen Z as well. Yeah. So who counts as Gen Alpha?
2010 and later.
2010 and later.
Oh, so my 10-year-olds
and
younger, they count as Gen Alpha. Lord help us. So that means what? So then Gen Beta is after that, isn't it? Yeah. Our kids probably?
No, before that.
Even before that?
My kids might end up being Gen Beta. I don't have any children yet, so if I have children...
Oh my God. Yeah. What a time. So we need to understand that we are supposed to be the generation that comes after the Salaf. خَيْرُ قُرُونِ قَرْنِي, isn't it? Yeah. So it's supposed to be the generation that come out with what the Prophet says, with the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim. Then there's supposed to be the Tabi'een, and then the Tabi'een. And then generally speaking, this generation that came after that period, that's one lumped generation. That's lumped into as one generation, right? That the Prophet ﷺ was talking about how there can come a people that are my brothers, right, and not my companions. You see, and so we're hopeful that the future has people that the Prophet ﷺ would describe as his brothers, you know, because they're a generation who rediscovered Islam really and found that out. But why we said dopamine, right? We got the generation bit done. Now it's the dopamine generation. The dopamine generation is more to do with, if we were to start using, you know, terms like ADHD, you know, and obsessive compulsive disorder and you know, attention deficit disorder and this and these sort of, if we just push all the terms away, is what I'm trying to clean the slate with us. Just what we observe, you know, like before you label someone, right? So for example, when people say someone has attention deficit, right, or someone who, you know what I found, and I know this isn't part of the topic that we even agreed, but I just wanted to share this, is I found that child, there's some people where their mind wants to work at a certain pace, and there's some people, it's like their body just wants to work at a certain pace. So those children, I found, if you wrestle with them and you play with them and you make them do physical things like, you know, like scrubbing, cleaning, football, sports, whatever, I found that a lot of of course everything's on a spectrum and all of the rest of it, but I found a lot of that attention issue is managed well if they're active, if they're physically active. And actually what happens is a lot of the symptoms are maxed out because they have a body that's just screaming, yelling, and wants to be active, and you've given them a screen, right? And there's an amazing review. I wish I may try to put the link because I would recommend it to every parent. So if I forget, please comment and ask for it. There's a brother on Instagram that is actually reviewing every single cartoon or everything on TV at the moment for children, and he's measuring them based on colors, based on the background music, based on how many clips, so how many times you have what we call a camera change. So here we have 1, 2, 3, right? And it will happen very rarely, like when someone starts speaking and then it will turn over. But a lot of these programs today are having a camera switch after every, like they're averaging something like 15 to 20 fast cuts within 1 minute. Yeah. Can you imagine what that's doing to a person who's more susceptible to that than another person? You know, when they say ADHD, that child is sitting there like this. Yeah. He's just, and you can see it because there's just too much going on. There's music going on, there's flight, fight or fright kicking in every single moment. The music's got suspense, this, that, and everything else. And there's, you know, really, really strong colors. You know, the background are strong colors and the foreground are strong colors, okay? They're excited for no reason. The characters are excited even when they're not excited. I thought I was describing cartoons. I think I'm describing influences now as well at the same time by accident, right? Constantly, you know, like this on in front of a camera and going crazy. And what I found is that those children respond better to physical exercise. That when they do more exercise and when they're trained better outside of being outside of a screen, you'll see that they're calmer. And what's happening is that the reason why they're stressed out is because they have this energy that is being channeled into things that are even bad for them. So can you imagine if you had you're allergic to something, right? You can be mildly allergic to stuff as well, like, was it gluten, lactose, whatever, right? And you're feeding that child lactose his whole life. Or you're feeding that child, you know, something with gluten in it his whole life. Naturally, that's going to have an overall long-term effect. And we're not looking at screen time and how that's affecting us as adults, affected us as adults and affecting the youth. And one thing we talked about, as you've just rushed in, and I've just, you know, we've brought this in, is that a lot of this has very little resemblance with our childhoods. You see, and I think what happens is that there are a generation who just don't know about our childhood. And I thought maybe I would discuss what we did for entertainment, what we did for fun. And, maybe I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah.
Ustad Momin.
I just remember a lot of the time, our childhood growing up, lacked that advancement of technology. We see screens I was actually thinking about my own house. I was thinking, there's a screen almost in every room now. If you don't have a screen, you have a portable one, and there's a screen in your pocket, there's a screen on the wall. Everywhere you look, there's screens to
Screen on the washing machine now.
That's it.
Soon you'll be playing Pac-Man on the washing machine.
And, when I think of growing up, there just wasn't that. There was one TV in the living room, and that was it. And every other room had its purpose. Your bedroom, there's just some beds in there. I remember, just silly things you do as a kid. We would make forts in our bedroom. So my brothers, we shared a room. So we had one bed on one side and another bed on the other. And there was a bunk bed on one side. So we'd get duvets and blankets, and we'd make tunnels, and we'd set things up.
My kids did that last night because of the Dhul Hijjah Eid holiday.
Yeah.
They slept last night. They laid everything. I don't know how much sleep they got, but they laid down blankets and everything and made the little camp.
Yeah, and there's something nice about just nothing. There's nothing else involved. It's just what you've got in the room. You get pillows. You hold things up, and take you maybe 2 hours to set up. Then you just go and sit in there.
So that was creativity then, yeah?
And it's just using, it's resourcefulness in a way that whatever's around you, you make use of it. But there was an enjoyment, you could do it on your own. But, with my siblings, there was a sense of, let's go do something. Let's do something that's not just staring at
You mentioned
screen.
once you had some box or something.
Yeah, so, we had, alhamdulillah, we had quite a long garden in one of our houses we used to live in. And I remember one day, it was a gloomy day. The sun's tucked away, clouds covering everything, and you think, what should we do? And there was just this big cardboard box. I can't remember what it was for, probably some furniture or something. And this big box was just left in the house. So what we did is we managed to turn it into a big sort of wheel. It was still attached from one of the edges. And like a tank wheel rolls around like that. So we got it, sort of squished it down, put it in the garden, and all got inside and started rolling down the garden in this cardboard box. But it was so rigid in terms of it was strong. And we just went up and down the garden. And it was just hours of fun in a cardboard box. And you think, you give that kid now and say, go on, do something, Yeah. I don't know if you get the same response.
Resourcefulness.
And yeah.
Where today, in an age of abundance, I think people are less resourceful.
I think, just on that last point, to riff off that for a second, I think that part of it is an age of abundance, but I think also part of it would be, so you said, I don't know what comes before millennials, is it boomer?
Something
then
like
you have
that.
millennial, and then you have Gen Z.
Yeah.
I read an article recently about a Gen Z assistant nurse who was doing a temp job for her degree or something in America, and a child came in with her millennial mum. She's got her yoga mat and proper millennial vibes, right? And the kid comes in with her mum, and the mum sits down on her phone, sits down on her phone. Phone's just where her mind's at. And the only moment she looks up to check on her daughter or whatever was when her daughter went to where there's a bunch of leaflets and a bunch of advertising they're doing in this clinic, and she swiped them all off. And this woman said, this girl or teenager, whatever age she is, she looked up, she looked at the mum looked up, laughed at that, haha, how cute, and then went back to it.
Oh my God.
I think
So lost, man.
I think part of the dopamine generation is driven by the fact that there are parents who just put these devices in their children's laps all the time, I think I've found more children who have iPads. I know more children that have iPads than adults that have iPads, which is quite worrying. Anyway, going to my childhood. I don't remember that much of my childhood. I filled my brain full of other useless stuff, probably.
No, come on. You must remember.
No.
What do you mean? You blocked it out?
No, not at all. I have a video on my Google Drive going back from, every now and then it just pops back up in my reminder. You know that thing it does every time it gives you some new thing in Google Photos? There was a video of my brother and I in the front.
We haven't got that yet, but Apple will provide in the next update.
We have There's a video of we have a long coffee table in the front room of my house that we grew up in. We used to live in Qatar. We'd come back in the summer, and probably we would play computer games and things like that, watching TV shows or whatever. But for some reason, for like a whole summer or for several days straight, the only game we would play was make a sock ball, and we'd be bouncing it off the table and kind of playing table tennis or some type of game, just with a table and a sock ball and two people. And the other one's just videoing, and then we're just rotating through. So I think my brothers were more resourceful than I was, definitely, when it came to coming up with random games. Sock ball seemed to be like a standout prop in our games. We'd be like sock football. There'd be one game where we'd be doing off the wall, like squash, sock ball, squash. I remember reading a lot growing up. When I got a phone as well, I remember getting an app that had sepia mode. That's the brownish paper mode, right? And I would just read books all night, for example. Probably not the best thing to read books all night on your phone or any device, but still better than being on TikTok or being on various channels where you do have a lot of these cuts. And I know we're going to get on it, but I'm seeing the impacts. If we're talking about dopamine, just to go on a bit of a quick tangent on dopamine, because there are other forms of dopamine, fast food being one of them. Sugar is a big dopamine. I'm on my sugar flex at the moment, right? There's glucose, what do we call it? Curves and things.
Spikes in...
Glucose spikes.
Yeah.
So dopamine through that form, if it's the dopamine generation, sugary foods is also a big one. I had a kid in madrasa last week who was eating one of the soft Kinder Bueno wafer type things.
Yeah.
And he said, my mouth hurts. So I looked at it, and half of his molar is missing. And it's just... At the time, obviously not all the time, but at the moment when he showed me, it was full of Kinder sauce. So the kid's tooth had disappeared. I've got more of my molar at 26, and this kid does that. He's 7, I think. This one, Liam, his name is. So sugar creates dopamine, and this stuff creates dopamine as well, and both of them actually contribute to aging as well. There's a doctor from France. She's going on a bit of a tour right now, doing a lot of podcasts, and she talks about how dopamine increases the speed at which you age. And I'm seeing kids with skin and with nails and with hair falling out at an accelerated rate than anyone. I don't remember seeing kids with discolored nails or missing molars or bad skin when I was...
Definitely, I'd agree that two things. One is definitely the way a mind is shaped is based on the home environment that the parents provide. And one of those is also to do with the diet as well, right? When you see a child who can't eat his dinner without a fizzy drink, right? That's a sign, that's a problem. And I knew people who couldn't even drink water, couldn't drink tap water, it had to be a fizzy drink. It's crazy, they can't drink water, And I think we created a kind of an artificial generation with all the problems that come with it, all the damage that it does to your gut with all of these chemicals that have never ever seen our gut lining before. This interaction has never happened, but now you've got all of these additional chemicals that they're putting in foods. You get, highly processed foods being the largest percentage of the diet of a person is within the UK. One of the largest. The UK has one of the highest percentage of highly processed foods as part of their regular daily diet than anywhere else. So I think what we need to do is when we keep seeing kids popping up from everywhere with ADHD and this and that and the other, we have to start thinking about what's going on here, right? I still go back home. If I go to Bangladesh, if I go to Egypt, if I go to Tunisia, I go anywhere. I still see people in rural areas, in villages. I don't see people with this and that and on the spectrum and nut allergy and every allergy in the world. They're too hungry to be on to have an allergy, right? Or they don't. Eating is something that is just a certain part of the day, but most of the time they're out, they're walking, they're going places, and I think definitely diet plays a major role in that. But one thing I wanted to ask is going back to your point about parents, how is it that, like when we were young, right? I had two things, right? Two things why I wasn't bored, right? First of all, the reason why I wasn't bored is more to speak to some of the points you guys made. which is like when I was 5, I distinctly remember that I had a block of wood. I mean, literally a block of wood like this, right? I don't know where it's from, but it was like hard as rock. And I had a nail about this long and a hammer. And all I'd do is nail the nail into the block of wood and then pull it out. And that's it. And from that, it got into, I used to strip wires. So if there was old wiring, I used to strip out the copper out of wires. And then I used to have batteries. And I had a very big thing where underneath my parents' bed, and you know the old Pakistani Bangladeshi beds are quite high, the big carved out wooden, I don't know if you guys still remember those from that generation. So there was this space underneath the bed, like you could rent it out. Yeah. I'd go underneath there and I'd have all my batteries and they'd be taped together. So I'd have batteries like this long. And eventually, obviously, I'd attach bulbs and the bulbs used to blow because too many batteries. So then I'd reduce the number of batteries, tape them up, and then I'd have motors and fan and things. You know, when I had my tonsils out, my mum bought a bag with all my wires and batteries. That was her, take care of yourself, son. We're not going to be here. They went home and I was there overnight. Why they make you have cornflakes in the morning after having I do not know, right? That's some hardcore rehab. But that night, I was left with my bag, no console, no switch, no YouTube, no tablet, nothing, just that bag. Nurse comes in the morning, finds me sitting up in bed, and there's a cardboard, thick cardboard made in just very simple, just made in an arch like this, just this thing. And it's got a fan and it's supported from the back, batteries and everything inside. And I made a propeller. I made the fan parts and I attached that to it and sealed that on as well. And I have my own thing of where I get paper clips and I get pins and I make switches, right? And I just sat there and I was just being blown with this fan. And the nurse said, "What's that? What are you doing?" I just said, "Just feeling hot." Right? And she thought that was so impressive. What, you felt hot, so you made a fan? Now, subhanAllah, that's the kind of, my dad had, I think it was a mango, those crates, those ones where you get bananas in, and those proper cardboard boxes, but they're quite tough on the edge, right? Quite thick, strong structure. I cut out the corners. I got a beach towel. Never been to the beach. Asians, scared of I don't know what it is. But we got a beach towel because it was cheap, And I laid down the beach towel inside, right? Bought bouncing balls from, the orange machines that you put the coin in. I don't know if they still exist, right? Right? Inflation now, probably £2.99. But the point is 20p, thing. Yeah. You put the 20p in and whatnot, and you get these bouncing balls. And I had these sticks that I'm sure they were out of a cot. The sticks that would make the kind of barrier of the cot. So these sticks, we used to have them, 2 strings coming out from the wall, hooks, 2 strings, and the stick and the kitchen roll will be there. The kitchen towels will be there, right? So I had a few of those spare, right? And and that we were playing snooker basically. That's what we were doing. We were playing snooker. And it's strange as anything, right? Because when you're playing with bouncing balls, when you hit it too hard, there's the balls sort of, because of the rubber, they recoil like this because there's a friction there. So if you hit it too hard, the ball will actually just go off the table. You'll never see a ball where you hit it go that way, but it does in this situation. Yeah. But that's how desperate we were to emulate what we were seeing on the snooker, on the TV. We saw the snooker, we made our own snooker table. You see, you get a cardboard box and you think, that'd make a good slide down the stairs, right? And you're dealing with that. Or some tank wheel. Yeah. We used to be out all the time. Parents could trust us to be, out. I would dig up, this is really mean, but, I was really a kid. I used to dig up bits of grass. Well, actually, it was a nice patch of grass near our block of flats. But there's always people taking their dogs there, right? For them, it's the loo for their dogs. And I think nowadays they're forced to pick it up, right? Yeah. Do you see, it's modern age now. You have to pick your own dog's poop. Yeah, sophistication of picking up poop every morning. Yeah, well done. So they didn't do that in those days, though. They just take their dog and do their business and go. So we used to be annoyed because they're like, Now our grass pitch is ruined. So I thought, I'm going to make traps. I said, I'm going to make traps. We dug holes into the grass, and then we put twigs over the hole. No, sorry, we put in the dog doo-doo in the hole, and then we put twigs over it, and then we feathered like bits of grass all over it like that. So it's all camouflaged. And we'll come back the next day and see that it all snapped into him. We say, yeah,
Gotcha.
you got your what you deserve. You know, you've met your own. You know, and that's. But do you see the creativity in thinking about these things? We used to have camps. I don't know if you guys used to have camps. We had trees and places where we'd make camps, right? Where like hideouts and places you could be. Right? I remember one of the guys in my area, he had a camp, and during the winter, it was in a tree, so like a tree house camp. But the tree had shed all the tree leaves because it's the winter, right? And I'm walking past, and he said, "You better cover your eyes. If you see my secret camp, it's bare naked, right? Because of the tree is like, you could see.
Yeah.
It's not a secret, guys. I can see you. I swear, if you look at us right now, we'll come down there. You're not allowed to look at our camp, right? But this is the things I imagine, you know, and we came up with these things, and we enjoyed these things. You know, we were getting blackberries, you know, from this garden of this old man, and you'd have to climb onto their greenhouses, right? And because the glass would break, you'd have to kind of distribute your body weight, right? To make sure we're using science, right? We're distributing our body weight to make sure we don't fall through the glass. Now compare that to today. It's a boy with headphones on, yelling at a screen, right? With zombies, you know, decapitated, you know, and I just don't know what to say. Like, it's a complete generational difference. The other thing I wanted to touch on, that was just my bit, but I wanted to say, I want to throw it out to you guys as well, is chores were a real thing in my house, like a proper thing, right? If the kitchen cabinets needed to be cleaned, right? It's only because my mum was like super nice and sweet and merciful. She'd say, I'll give you £1 to go clean it up. Otherwise, she could have just made us do it anyway. But we were like, that's it. And we would scrub the kitchen cabinets, you know, and all the cupboards, you know. She'd give us a nice bowl. So the effort, you know, she'd give us the bowl and put fairy liquid in and put sponges and would clean, and then would dry them and etc. You know, we had chores. We had those days where my generation, we'd even have vacuums up until a certain point. You know, that's why we call them hoovers, because it was the company that made them, right? Yeah. So before that, it was just a dustpan and brush, and we'd go around the whole house. We didn't have, you know, and carpet cleaning, my dad used to come to me with a scrubber on, like knuckle dusters, but with scrubbers on, right? And he'd say, son, you know, we're going to clean the entire house. Dad, just these. And he goes to me, something is better than nothing. That's his only English he ever used, right? Something is better than nothing. And, you know, your knuckles would kind of swell up because all the suds and everything and the friction, you know. So this is a sort of crazy thing we used to do as the chores. Like we had we knew about how to use space, how to be, have, you know, physical education. People forgot what PE was about. Physical education builds confidence, that you feel that the space I'm taking up right now, you know, I deserve that space that I take up right now. Actually, I am, you know, I understand how to use physical space. You know, I understand how to, you know, the fact that we were talking about jumping over fences and stuff like that. Now, because we knew we could clear it by that much, so we would jump over the fence, right? You see, so we'd, you know, jump over gates and fences and climb and all of these things. And we used to get given chores. Now, I just wanted to say our generational difference is, I think, near a decade or more. More, right? Definitely more.
Yeah, about 14 years.
But the culture in our home was quite similar.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the reasons why there's an affinity there of how we look at this generation and what we went through. Like, did you have to do chores at home?
Yeah, I think probably one of the chores that my mum kept us away from was the cooking, because she just ruled the roost. Yeah. But other things, like we used to clean the cars, for example. We used to
free valeting.
Yeah, and like hoovering and stuff like that. But it was always a case of you actually wanted to help out. There was something in you that you were around your family. There's not always these screens distracting you, and you wanted to actually pick up skills. It's a strange thing, but I actually started ironing my clothes at a young age.
I had to do it for my whole family.
Yeah, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to wait
Man,
for my
those
mum to do it.
saris. Thank God she didn't wear them after. But you know, for some reason I had to iron my dad's flares, my mum's saris, right? That she didn't wear, but I had to iron them, and you know, my uniform for my older brothers and my siblings.
And more of it came out of just you wanted to be independent in a way.
Yeah.
And I wanted my clothes ironed, so I just I learned. And you know, in the process, I think you know sometimes parents are a bit protective. And iron's hot. I remember I burnt my arm. I had a scar there for years, but I tell you, I never burnt myself after that.
Yeah.
Because why am I reaching around the iron like that for?
Yeah.
So
that's right.
You just have to learn from some of those things. So yeah, I think there was essence of you were almost you wanted to get involved with those things.
Yeah.
Because you know you're learning a skill that you're going to use forever.
Yeah.
So that's what I feel like.
I mean, I like I said, with respect, my house wasn't maintained because me and my brothers were scrubbing kitchen cupboards, because that was so few and far between. It was little tasks here, little tasks there, keep us busy. It was usually, if you don't look busy, it would either be go sit and read Quran, go and do a chore, or do some homework or something, right? So if homework's done, then, you know, read some Quran. If Quran's not done, then do chores, right? So we were always kept, you know, my mom, you know, you could just, even though she's passed away from 8 years now, but I have memories of just always the noise of rushing up and stairs, Allah yarhamuha, just going up and down, you know, and there's this busyness about her, you know. Nowadays, apparently there's nothing to do in the home, apparently. I don't recall. I remember managing a home was a full-time occupation. Do you see? It was a very busy job for her. She's always, you know, thinking and you know, commandeering, you know, and leading the kids. You know, all this, you know, Khadija radiallahu anha was a businesswoman. Manage and delegate and organize and time and prepare things in the home, please, right? Because that's something that's needed. And I found that, you know, that busyness of being, you know, active, it actually made the moments where we were resting playing games. We played computer games. They weren't as immersive. Yeah, of course. But when we played computer games, it was like after we'd done everything else. Yeah. So it was actually more fulfilling. It wasn't the main task. You know, there's guys who are working in the city, your age, who literally would work all day and go home and put their headphones on. And that'd be their evening, isn't it? They're not married. They're paying expensive rent for a little place, little room, and they'd log on and they'll be playing COD, and then they go to work the next day, and they can live their life like that every day. And what I'm worried about is the life skills, of boys and girls. You know, my experience is because we're one of 5 brothers. That's my experience. But in my house, like one of my sons is the recycling monitor. So it's no longer about do a task. You know, to be told to do a task is also ruination of our youth. What actually happens is that he has to keep an eye on whether the recycling things that need to be recycled are piling up. Oh, it's piling up a bit. I better take that down. I better, throw that away. Oh, you know what? I might not be here when it piles up. So since only it's a little bit, but I'm already here. I might as well just. So my youngest is now thinking like that. Do you see?
Like responsibility.
Yeah, it's a responsibility. Yeah. You know, my other son, he cleans out the bins, vacuums the house. My older son pretty much does so many things that are needed to do. But there's this idea that all the children have things that they have to be aware of. He's actually bathroom monitor. So he'll make sure that the bathroom's clean, the floor's clean, the sinks are clean, and all of those things, right? So I will no longer do the thing that the children are parenting us almost, right? But we just clean it up because we think, oh, no one's gonna ever. That's why you have a culture. That's why when a child sees some clothing on the stairs, my mind, I'm not talking about Narnia, I'm not talking about Call of Duty world. In the real world, stairs and a piece of clothing don't match in my head. They just don't fit. There's something in that already. The imagery is wrong. Someone could slip, fall on their back, right? It's going to get dirty. Clothes are meant to be on us, not on the floor. So many contradictions in my mind when I see that. But I want to leave it for a bit. I want to see what happens. 2 days will go by with this modern generation of children, they will step over it. They will jump over it. They'll jump over it, but they'll never pick it up. You know, if the loo rolls run out, who's going to put a new one on? No. Let's try to somehow, you know, anything but to replace the thing. And that culture wasn't the culture I grew up with. If you left the bathroom and then it found that it was empty, you'd get a telling off. If you left something on the stairs, it's longer, it's more effort. And I'm going to now reveal the secret of secrets about the Gen Z and the parenting problem. It is longer to tell the children to go all the way back to the bathroom. Can you see anything wrong with this? What do you assess is wrong? And then make them do it. It is longer. But you know why they won't? Why there's no motivation to take longer? Because she's too busy on the phone. That's why. And he's too busy on his phone. That's the combination of both kind of loserville mentality combined. One brother we know likes to call it jabroni behavior, right? It's now jabronis of two generations combined to make Jabronistan, right? Because what's happened now is the parent is thinking someone will pick it up. The child is thinking there's someone picking it up, right? The mother's thinking, you know, the husband, everyone is thinking someone else will pick it up. No wonder now when we try to teach the deen, they always think, oh, you're doing it because that's your role. My job is just to, you know, lean back, sit, you know, and because they think it's always someone else's job. If you start at home thinking responsibilities are all someone else's job, unless I'm compelled to do something, then in the ummah, no one's going to do da'wah, no one's going to do enjoying the good, forbidding the evil, no one's going to learn the deen because they all think it's someone else's job. And then they're comfortable looking through a screen, watching someone else do the job. Do you see? And I would say that is the secret of secrets of where the dopamine has now actually invaded the minds of both generations. Both of them are addicts. So the reason why she hasn't got time to take calmly, not shout, not yell, just calmly go down and go, you look in the bathroom. This picture doesn't make sense, son. Do you want to have a look? What's wrong? Look deep within yourself. And then you think, well, you know the thing I told you 1,000,000 times, that thing hasn't been done. And he'll recognize, and you say, well done, please deal with it. And because of the impact of that being, in using their terminology, their vernacular, longing it out, if you long it out like that, the punishment was the time it took. The effort you made as a parent for the child is like, that's so much time away from what I was doing previously, I'm never going to do that again. Isn't it?
And now it's a punishment for the parent to take the time out.
The parent sees it as a punishment because you're taking him and her away from her screen.
Yeah,
Do you see? Yeah. And this is where chores, like in the house, like when we finish, if my wife cooks, my wife cooks every day, my kids will thank her every day, at dinner, every single day. They'll say, you know, Jazakallah khairan ma'am, me for making the food, right? We'll all thank her for doing that. And then what happens? Is there real thanks? Like now there's all these plates and everything and the table's a mess and everything's a mess. You know, one of them always will clean the plates and the other one will wipe the table. Do you see? Do you know how long it takes for our wives to actually cook? It does take some time. You know, if you're cooking something for a family, maybe for one, but if you're cooking for a family, it actually takes time, right? So if you're doing all of that cooking, the least you could do is just the cleaning up after. Do you see? Yeah. So all my children, right? You know, my daughter, you know, she's only 5, but she's going to get promoted soon, yeah? And she can't reach the sink, right? But the point is eventually all of them are going to have these chores because then they will learn awareness, responsibility, resourcefulness, all the things that Gen Z, no offense, and Gen Alpha and God help Gen Beta lack, right? Because of the automation of everything. You were telling me, before the cameras went on, you told me kids, even though they're supposed to be more technologically savvy than you and I, they couldn't even print.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, teaching in a school, we do a lot of work on the
Is it because they think they're going to ask someone, hey Siri, can you print out?
Yeah, the thing is, they're so used to using phones and screens. You know, like phones and tablets, they're not computers.
Yeah.
So you don't need to save the file. You just go on the app. And they actually, it's really funny. They'll call things on the computer just apps. I mean, they technically are, but they refer to it in the same way they understand phones and tablets. So when you just say, "Oh, print the document off," they'll say, "I don't know how to do that." If I say file save as, they think I'm talking a different language. They're just like,
Anything that's
what do you mean?
procedural,
Yeah,
systemic.
things that are,
Has a nizam.
we've learned as a generation where technology has advanced really quickly, but we've picked it up. They are stuck with a very simplistic way of viewing it. So unless you show them and teach them, they only know what they're used to. They just know, you press the button, YouTube, you type it in, you go on the video. Play, pause, share, subscribe.
The culture of itqan. I was thinking of a hadith, I might misremember it. And if I do, my son's all the way back there somewhere, he can correct me. It's Inna Allaha yuhibbu idha amila ahadukum amalan. Is that right? Ayyutqinahu. Really nice hadith. Indeed, Allah loves when any of you do any action. Idha amila ahadukum amalan. Yeah? Which that means if you do anything, ayyutqinahu. That he yutqinah. That he does it with itqan. And that means that you do prayers with ihsan and you do other activities with itqan. And I've also found that differentiation between the two worlds of itqan and ihsan are very interesting. Do you know why? Because if you make things that are mubah and things that are just to do with general daily life almost ritualistic. I mean, I'm imagining now, like I think it's Japanese, the way they have a certain ritual about the way they pour the tea and they pass it across and so on. That certain normal aspects of life are also done with the level of itqan. Yeah. Usually what happens is that enhances when you think you're doing a religious act. Do you see? Because that becomes sacred. Now, you lose the concept of a sacred act, when the non-sacred is dealt with such irreverence. Do you see? Like it just doesn't matter, can you ask someone, can you pass me a pen? These generations, they try and pick it up with their feet and pass it over. They don't know the difference between their hands and the upper part and their feet. If you think about it, all the major, I saw in a recent class, the Sheikh was discussing how all the major features about us, our sight, our mind, etc., is in the upper part. And our desires and everything else and our stomach is in the lower extremities of the body, right? And the higher part is the mind. But these days, children don't know the difference between the adab of just even their hands and their feet. Their feet will go anywhere. Their feet wander anywhere. It's a culture that we once had where we knew the difference between someone. No, it's like if someone's sitting there, you won't step over them, right? There's a culture of knowing the dignity of the head. It's not just another part of the body. But today, it just seems like no chores. At home there isn't really any outlet for creativity of making your own fun, making do. And I worry for this generation. And this translates then in the classroom, and I wanted to ask you, how do you, that generation, you are in direct contact with them within the classroom environment. How does that play out in the field of education?
Quick anecdote to begin. There are several students who, in their phone apps on their calendars, have got reminders on a Sunday after madrasa to cut your nails, or every day at 4 p.m. Even though I've told their parents, I've also I said reach out to a couple of parents, to the admin team, and let the parents know this is the study plan that we have for your children. And even how I had to map. Kind of it's a bit of coaching, but it's also you're so you have your phone, you use it for. So one of the kids had 7 pages of apps, by the way. So I have to go 7 pages back. I was like, "Where's the calendar?" And they're like, "I don't know." So I had to search for the calendar because I couldn't find it within the sea of apps, right?
A sea of apps.
What are you putting in? You need to cut your nails from them.
Yeah, I've got it on 2 kids' phone calendars. It says cut your nails at 4 p.m. The kid, first time he forgot. So I just I have my in my bag of tricks. I've got a nail cutter. I just sent to the bathroom, go cut your nails in the madrasa. I don't see my remit.
This is, this, can you believe this is fitrah? This is considered acts of fitrah. Basic fitrah. So how modern is man? If basic things like you don't see your nails and feel like a... The whole point is that during Dhul Hijjah, when you're not shaving and cutting your nails, you're feeling that discomfort. I think people are doing Dhul Hijjah all year. They're doing the whole year not noticing it, right? Whereas you're actually supposed to feel something that, you're supposed to feel unkempt, and you're supposed to feel like this is a struggle for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And yet, generally speaking, I find that is the case as well. Even just basic self-care, cutting the nails and dressing right, smelling right, washing, clothes being, these things are gone. And all of the attention to have people looking sensible, being clean, being, have, basic etiquettes and behaviors and manners, all of that time that could be spent in doing those things. And I think it's what you said before. It's about connection, having people to talk to. When you're constantly interacting, and I'm talking about really having a conversation, right? You're learning behavioral things, you're learning manners, etiquettes, etc. You don't have to worry about you haven't bathed for a teenager doesn't have to worry that he hasn't bathed for 6 days, right? He doesn't have to worry when he's in front of his screen because you can't smell him through Bluetooth. Yeah. Maybe that's a feature they'll add in.
Until someone comes and is around you. And that's a point to mention about, we were talking about social, we lived in a time where you'd go knock on someone's door and say, do you want to come outside and play? You had to actually physically meet someone and do something. And being around people, this is a funny story, it's sort of chucking myself under the bus, but I remember a guy at school was like, how did you get that orange tooth? And I was just like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's really cool you got an orange tooth. What? You know why my tooth was orange? And I hadn't brushed it.
Oh my God.
Terrible. I'll check myself. But it was like, someone had to tell me that. I can't hide behind a screen. No one knows what my teeth look like. Yeah. But that stuck with me so much. I was like, I went and checked in the mirror. I was like, oh my God, why is my tooth orange? And then I went and I was like, I'm going to brush my teeth every day now. There was another instant. We were like playing around in the playground and my nail caught someone's cheek. Oh, literally cut them there. And the teacher, again, same what you're saying. They're like, why are your nails so long?
Yeah.
But it like ingrained in me that, why are they so long? I need to sort that out. Go cut them. Yeah. And like little things like that is social interaction and social norms that you pick up.
Decorum.
Yeah. And it builds you to know, that is how I should be. So, like we said, you have to meet people to actually do that.
I think one of the problems has been is we are passing on our comforts to our youth are more comfortable in certain fields. Look, they have more stresses. I've never seen kids stressed about exams more than I've seen in these generations in terms of like the way they feel like their whole life depends on, and I've not seen that. We were revising for few weeks before, did the exam, we were laughing after. We were just waiting for our results. It wasn't like this. Yeah. It's not, kids are thrown in a little bit earlier into being driven into the working world and market and being qualified and so on. But one thing I will say is when we thought, well, what are my children meant to do if the things some of the things I used to do when I was young, they're made redundant, right? Some of them aren't. They can still, like technically when we're making things out of boxes, and that was STEM, early STEM before it was called STEM, right? We were making things and creating things and so on. But what I think is you can't impose your discomforts on your children because the modern age has mitigated those discomforts. However, Islam is a timeless religion, right? Islam is a timeless way of life. So the whole point is in Islam is, talking in extremes sometimes helps, right? They say, يُعْرَفُ الْأَشْيَاء بِضِدِّهَا. Things are known by the opposites, right? If you're like in a third world country, in a developing country, right, and all you do is just about bring home grain and water, and some food, and go to some school in a tin hut, right? Then your impact on the world in terms of the global stage of what happens in humanity and what happens in the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is going to be, from a scriptural perspective, when we say la yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, that a soul is not commissioned to with more than it can, than it has the capacity for. I don't think that person has much of a responsibility, to be honest. Yeah, I think that person's sole religious duty is to do the best they can to survive, practice their deen, help the community, and do some other things. Like the best for that person in that economic bracket. I'm talking about realistically in terms of capacity and time. When you have people in our generation where you have now half a day more time than you had in the past, literally, because of all the automation, because of the cooking, whatever it is. The whole point is we were supposed to be the game changers, the world changers, the community, workers. We were supposed to be people who, as soon as Allah freed us, Allah liberated us from the shackles of. They have a phrase for it, isn't it? Just the manual shackles of manual labor and a life full of manual effort. Allah has lifted us from that because we think modern times was delivered by the disbeliever or the West. Modern times, the modern life and technology was delivered by really الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we taught man to be able to absorb and record knowledge and pass it down to generations. That's what it means, allama bil qalam. Yeah, the idea that we had the ability to gather knowledge. As I always say, monkeys and mice don't leave memos, isn't it? A mouse never leaves a memo. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. When you see a spring-loaded cheese with the avoid, son, avoid it. You'll never see that. There's no memos. Whereas we literally, every new IT specialist, every person in teaching, every person in our tutory, consulting, every person in consulting adopts everything that was learnt before that got refined and just moves forward with it. Really not that much concentration on the past. A scientist assumes so many theories are already correct. Even his own scientific theories are based on testimony, and they have a problem with testimony, but that's another story. And then he moves forward. He doesn't test every theory, and he moves forward, right? So what happens is every generation is passing on this information to the next, right? So as a result of that, Allah has freed us, and obviously this wasn't just within the West. This started within the Muslims in terms of algebra and and astrology and not astrology, astronomy. Yeah, the other one is shirk, right? And all of these different fields that Muslims advanced in, even in philosophy, in the arts, architecture, you name it. But the whole point is that was freeing man. If you look at the life of the Sahaba, life of the Prophet ﷺ, these special people to Allah were so busy with the daily task of life. When you read hadith, you realize they were just dealing with their home affairs, their family affairs, food, clothing. That stuff would suck the major part of your day, your wakeful hours. It would take the time out of your wakeful hours, right? And then with that little time that they had, these people were dominating from China to Spain, generations after generations. Our idea of dominating China to Spain is to have a takeaway from a Chinese restaurant and go to a Spanish tapas bar, right? This is we're dominating. And I think that needs to be looked at, that with the amount of time that we have, we need to be, with our generation, we can't say to them, oh yeah, just have swimming, just have football training, just all of these things. We need to be getting them to be really knowledgeable about the deen. It should be, I believe that the generation Alpha and generation Z, they should all be able to speak Arabic as a second language. Didn't we speak Urdu and Bangla and English? We had our second languages. It should be the language of Islam should be their second, and the mother tongue, from their home country or whatever. That should also be part of their language. But Arabic should be, everyone should be able to speak that. Why not? With all the gaming and there's plenty of time. Do you see? And it's amazing that every generation thinks that they're modern. In every time, everyone thinks, I'm modern. But if you think about Firaun thought he was modern, every period people think we've maxed out life. You know, we know it. And it's not. You just see the old patterns. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. You know, that time, Allah swearing by the token of time is something that is playing out in every generation. And I feel that with our generation, and what we try to do in the madrasa as well, is we don't just try and build hifz, we try to build aspiration, we try to build creativity, we try to build dawah goals, and we try to build people who are what isn't built in the home, right? And if the parents are watching for the madrasa, not you, you're lovely, right? But whatever it is, with those children, we try to, those young boys, those young teens, we try to teach them life skills, communication skills, and the ability to think, discern, discriminate, you know, to critically think. All of these things are needed for our kids. But unfortunately, what's happened is I feel that they are a generation that are not put to work. You see, our parents think that I've already put him to work too much because of his studies. Yeah. So I don't need to put him to work to anything else. And that is actually spoiling our generation. I don't think it's helping our generation. Every single child should be, think about it. You know, parents should be gathering and forming organizations to take their children in their cars and to deliver food on the streets to people. That is actually the kind of thing that we should be doing for our tarbiyah. And I'll tell you, you have to go to that extreme due to the extremes of your comfort in your life. That's the problem. They don't have their feet to the fire. So you have to now kind of compensate for that by, you know, when we talked about, you know, tough people create easy times and easy times creates weak people. Actually, no, it should be easy times creates people who are aware of their blessings, who then become tougher people. That is what I think we lack because of this dopamine generation. I wanted to throw it out to yourself. Any other kind of more to do with the attention span? How do you feel the attention span differs from your experience growing up? You know, you've had an academic life, you've been in classes and uni and everything else, and now you've got this generation, up and coming generation, and then I'm going to throw it over to you as well.
Definitely shorter, I would say. I can't get through 5 minutes. I can't get through 1 minute of talking without someone having to throw some kind of like meme phrase out. Someone, you know, I think LeBron James is always the one that's stuck in my head. There's like, so I don't know why. There's one kid in madrasa in my group A, on my Saturday madrasa, the one in my mosque. He's like a meme machine. This kid, he just knows all the things. There's like one about bucket, like 1-2 buckle my shoe. There's this LeBron James one. I know them now as well. The Sigma. There's this thing about some toilet, skibbity dop toilet or something.
I don't know any of these.
Yeah, I know. Look,
it's giving it away.
It's a good thing you don't know.
But I just pick these things up. So I can't get through talking for a minute or so without someone having to. I'm not interesting enough, essentially, for these kids. I need to have two of me, and I'm just like skipping between us or something for them to be sufficiently engaged. I mean, I didn't know the stat. I mean, so if it's 15 times in 1 minute, that's what every 4 seconds you have a fast cut, right? Then I can understand why they're like.
I think my generation would probably take pride in an age of information overload. We should actually take pride in being ignorant about a lot of things that aren't important.
Yeah,
but it's
I don't know half what's going on, and I'm happy for that fact.
Yeah, you know, we're the unencumbered, right? We're not weighed down by useless information. Because the whole point is when you have reels coming one after another, you have, say you watch 50 reels within an hour, maybe, or more, right? You have generated 50 feelings about something that has no impact on your life or your akhirah or on you or on the tasks you have to do in the day, literally have nothing. Do you see? And I think the attention span is my biggest worry. And it's not helped by the fact that the dawah scene has become one giant meme factory, right? And what that means is like, you know, I was talking to my son, I was thinking, we try to promote things and market, the family program, and we've got the Arabic Citadel courses, and we have various courses in this institute, and the madrasa, and the women's center, and the youth sanctuary center, and so many other things we co-manage, and with the colleagues, the sisters in the team as well. But one thing we realize is that all of these things that we have to manage, that in itself keeps us busy. That keeps us excited. That keeps us we don't need to, there's no goss, there's no keeping up with the gossip. It's actually keep up with the concern of people that you can actually impact. That is a useful discussion, talking about how we're going to do with this kid, how we're going to do with this client, how we're going to do with this, so we have, all of this work that, comes out of it. But my concern is people are expecting me for years now, in our internal conversations of like, why don't you dance? As in, why don't you, why am I not making a TikTok video every day, or speaking in front of a camera, or on YouTube, on Facebook, or whatever, I think you guys know me personally to know that I have, with very little reason or even encouragement, have a lot of things to say, and a lot of ayat or hadith or things I've come across, and I've got a lot of things to say, but yet I just can't do it. I can't dance. I can't do the thing where you have to go online and you have to seem more excited and do all the stuff, and
it's like putting a show on.
I understand. I was speaking to my son about, why do they need creatives, influencers? Why do we need influencers? Why do we need this? Because to sell your service or product, you need to entertain. So then the next question is, so that totally makes sense. If you entertain people, you will have more people engaged, and more people engaged will therefore bring them more to whatever product or service, or in our case, dini solutions, right? But why do they need to be entertained is the further question now. And the reason why they need to be entertained is because they're bored. So the next real question is why are people bored? What is boredom? You go meet a farmer. You say, you bored, mate? I don't think that a lot of farmers will understand what you mean by that. I don't know, mate. I get up, I have duties, and when I get them done, then I get tired. So then I go home and I rest and I eat with my family, and then, and then as I'm resting, I might watch some TV, or I might watch the stars, or I might sit outside and watch a fire, or a campfire, or whatever it is a person can do. The idea of being bored was, I'm not saying no one's been bored in the past. I mean, boredom was, let's say, maybe composed of like 5% of a person's mind space. I think most people are like 70% bored in their head. They're just bored. And so as long as, if you don't seem like you've had 6 cups of coffee and you're not jumping up around like a bunny and just going crazy, you can't attract their attention. Do you see? Sometimes I have to go, I think Brother Aki Ayman does it now. I think Hoblos did it before. I think, what's his name? Khalid Yassin did it before. Sheikh Khalid Yassin did it, and many other scholars before. You know what, they kind of yell at you. I think it's just keeping them awake is a skill. Do you see? And if you just rumble with your voice and say, and anything, or you say something violent or whatever, the fact that, may Allah bless all these people that I've mentioned, but the fact that is actually not to do with how strong the message is. That message, that yelling is coming across to them as normal. Like if you're deaf because you play music too loud, you're hearing the volume at what you and me would listen to any podcast or whatever at a medium volume. He isn't enjoying it more. He's deaf, that's why. So like if you eat sugar every day, your sensitivity to sugar means that you can't taste nuance in something that is naturally sweet. People don't know that tea is naturally sweet because you put milk in it. Milk is naturally sweet. They can't taste that because the gradation in their mind is like either sickly sweet or boring. So for them, it's like in their brain, they have 99% gray and 1% color. And that area is the only place you need to excite constantly. So is that what the world is? Is that what we're heading towards? That you have a world that is just amusing itself to death, bored out of their brains, and the only thing that will excite them is controversy, call outs, shout outs, lies, abusing people under the rubric of I'm accounting people. And is this what we're going to get? Just takedown videos and response videos and stuff like that. Can't people just meet together like we do and have a chat? I think.
You're already there.
Yeah.
To be frank.
Yeah.
Because dopamine is, at the end of this, a hormone, right? It's a chemical response in your body. You can get addicted to being slightly inflamed all the time because you're eating inflammatory food. You can get addicted to having.
And here's where I'll throw an idea out, and we won't elaborate on it because for another day, inshallah. Yeah. But I've always taught in the family program that under every single problem, both physical, political, military, you name it, there is a spiritual underlying problem. But I believe that. I believe that under every single. So when you say dopamine is what your body, by the way, doesn't actually know that you saw cars and fireworks and all of that. All your body knows is chemical responses. Yeah. So then what happens is when you're at odds with your body, when your body is frustrated and highly energized for no reason, amped up while your body isn't tired. So your heart's beating really, really fast. Normally historically, normally when your heart's beating fast, it's because the rest of your body is beating fast. Because your body and your heart are in sync. The reason why your heart's fluttering really fast is because you're running somewhere, or you're chasing something, or you're using a racket, whatever it is. But there is this disconnect, a disharmony between the body, the mind, and the soul. The mind's overactive even when you're trying to relax. The body is dormant when it wants to fight and it wants to break something, it wants to do something, but it's not being put to use. It's like a donkey, it needs to be put, any animal needs to put to use to be healthy. You leave it in the stable, it'll die. So you have to put them to work. You have to put this animal part of ourselves to work. And then between this mind and body, which Muslims have a thing about discussing mental health for children and adults and physical health and football, we forget that the mind and the body are still underpinned by a greater spiritual problem. Really, the boredom, I believe, stems from a slow spiritual death. I think that's what's taking place, a slow spiritual death. Do you see? That, this is why khushu', the Prophet said, the time will come and no one will have khushu'. And I was thinking, subhanAllah, what is the relationship between an entire ummah not having khushu' and being people who cannot focus in the first place? People who are dopamine addicts, right? People who can't focus for more than 5-6 minutes. And you know why I can test that? Because I have this lateral part of me, and it's annoying, and I know myself, right? That sometimes I speak to some people who I know who are a little bit brain dead, yeah? Well, let's put it nicely, dopamine addicts or something like this, right? And what I'll do is I'll speak about something in a very calm way. Like I'll say, well, once upon a time, I went there to a supermarket and I was just wondering, why is it thingy and all of that? And you can see them slowly sleeping like this. Yeah. And then I'll say something like, but then someone swore and then they'll be like this. And then I'll go back to the story about trying to find olive oil based mayonnaise, right? Right? And then this person will start falling asleep again. And then I'll say, and if you mention anything that's profane, dirty, disgusting, lowly, shallow, abusive, violent, they perk up again. And then when you talk about anything that's meaningful, significant, wholesome, intellectually satisfying, truthful. Why isn't truth interesting? Why would you be bored with truth? Truth will set you free. I love truth is the most interesting thing going. But truth is boring. Haqq is boring. People suffering is boring. People dying in Gaza is putting people off their dinner, man. They're bored. And the problem is, this is a slow spiritual death. There's no interest in Allah. There's no interest in the Rasul. There's no interest in the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who's interested in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why should we, and again in the family program in self-mastery, and I'm going to do it again and again every year, I'm going to attack the performative Muslim. Why are we making children perform that they're interested in Islam and us, when deep down we have no interest? Deep down, if this Quran wasn't called the Quran and you just told them this story and you took out all the names, You took out Yusuf, you took out all the names, you took out Nuh, you took out Lut, you took out all the names, and you just told them these stories. They say, man, that's dead, bruv. But then you tell Islam, oh, sorry, astaghfirullah, yes, it's the most amazing thing because Islam's the best, better than the rest. Right? But when you strip away the religious performance out of it, the Quran would be boring. The life of Sahaba would be boring. They don't shoot lasers out of their eyes. They don't have 3 rings from some galaxy or so. I don't follow all this Marvel films and all that. I only see them in the adverts or memes, right? Some guy with the galaxy, the cube from space and rings on his hand, and this guy and that guy and CGI and everything. The Sahaba will seem underwhelming. The Prophet ﷺ will seem boring. He's rahmatan lil alameen. You just think about the Prophet ﷺ, yeah? That the whole universe, nothing compares to the Prophet ﷺ in the creation. Nothing. Right? No interest in the Prophet ﷺ. You never imagine that this earth had a man walking like him walking on this earth. Nothing will make you imagine the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his 99 names, and how deep those are. Right? And how they manifest in our lives and in our community and our ummah. No interest. Because we are boring ourselves to death. And the reason why that is because we are amusing ourselves to death, because we actually have a long spiritual death that started from when we were given that screen when we were a young child. I feel that it was more like therapy today. Got a lot of our system about the generation, got to have a bit of a moan. I will say that we are very hopeful because the new generation are bringing things to the table that we would never imagine and never think of.
I'd also say with screens, we can always say negative things.
Well, we used to say telephone is shaitan, then TV was shaitan, and now TikTok is shaitan.
Filming, and
it's how you use it.
It's going to be viewed on a screen.
Exactly.
But what we say is like things in moderation, right? You take those things, and everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Is not so bad after all.
I had this brother, he was listening to Maher Zain every night before he went to sleep. Every night. That's quite a feat in terms of stamina and tolerance. Right? I'm not a big fan, but anyway. every night. And I said, and I was like, he goes, I said, you should really cut down on doing this or whatever. And he said, well, you listen to it, right? Because we put it on Eid day, Eid and Eid or something like that, yeah, for my kids, right? And I said, bruv, when I listen to it, I hear a nasheed. When you listen to it, you hear wahi. Right? You hear revelation. Because you're so attached to this music, you're sleeping at night, and and I don't know, a lot of these songs are like, you are the one. People think about their girlfriend or their God, we don't know these days, right? I think a lot of the songs seem to play on both.
So why is it sleep the whole time?
Just going to sleep listening to it, isn't it? It's the lullaby.
Lullaby, yeah.
Do you see?
Okay.
Right? Subhanallah. I'm listening to Sheikh Ratib al-Nabulsi, his tafsir, right? Because no offense to him, he's such a knowledgeable sheikh. Yeah, I think he's from Asham originally, Nablus and so on. And his talks are amazing, but he has a voice like butter. Like he has such a smooth voice that you could fall asleep to him. So I've got an app, and you press it. It's radio, 24 hours, just playing Sheikh Nabulsi's tafsir and sometimes Sha'rawi. So you play that, and it's like, you listen to it. I learn a few things. Sometimes I can't go to sleep because he says some gems and I have to write them down. But other times I listen and I fall asleep. So it depends what the mubah means to you. If the mubah and something that is any inanimate thing can become an idol. That's the whole point about being careful about these things. That we can become like we worship things. Yeah, we used to end up worshipping things and that are mubah. And why I say worship is because you think that those things are the purpose of your life. You think those things determine your behavior and your actions. You think those things are the actual sources of happiness and not, ask yourself this. We will testify that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think I should end on this because this is the real poignant moment, I think. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says I'm not good at pulling things from my memory. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Yeah? And is it not with the remembrance of God that the hearts find itmi'nan, tatma'innul qulub, that the hearts find rest? we're going to have to ask ourselves hard questions. Does this book give us our hearts rest, or do the things that we're watching on screens give us heart rest? Because the claim is this is the book that does it. Now we can recite it, we can memorize it, we can tell people what it means, but do we actually take that itmi'nan? Do we take this tatma'innul qulub? Do we take that comfort and that rest in our heart through the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does it satisfy us? Does it satiate us? And if there's something wrong with our appetite, then revisit your appetite, I guess, isn't it? Reconfigure your appetite. This is one thing I've taught often in the tazkiyah classes, that you can reconfigure your tastes. You can reconfigure your tastes. You know, this Sahabi, he saw the Prophet ﷺ like a certain kind of food. And he said, I'm going to eat it now because he likes it. Rahmatan lil Alameen likes this, so I'm going to like it now. So he tasted it and he kept eating it, and now he likes it. He's literally changed the... Remember, this food he doesn't originally like. What's happening is, or it could be tabi, I'm not exactly sure right now. We're podcasting here, right? References are usually my classes. But can you imagine that he's eating only because the Prophet ﷺ ate that? Can you imagine that? He's saying that if that I will, something that my receptors in my tongue, they don't like, I will use my faith to reconfigure how I view that taste, and I'm going to like it. That's crazy. And that's how we want to be. We want to be people who reconfigure our tastes and our desires according to the Sharia of this deen. You know, we want to reconfigure our likes and dislikes in line with the commands and prohibitions in Islam. And for that to happen, we need to change the way we interact with screens and the way we interact with our children as well, with screens. You see, and my advice is to really just cut out screens like as much as you can throughout the whole week. Maybe bring them out on the weekend or times when you are actually busy and you give your kids things to do. You see, right now, I'd give my kids either something to watch on a screen while we're doing the podcast. If not, previously to that, or what they're doing, I think even up until now they were doing, is they were folding leaflets, right, for, you know, the community. So either way, I think we need to evaluate the difference between the relationship between our attention span and our boredom and our khushu' and our religious interest, I guess. Anyway, let's leave it at that. We've said a lot. I hope we've spread more light than heat. Jazakumullahu khair for taking part. And thank you for watching. Please leave comments. Advise us on perhaps some topics that you'd like us to discuss. This is a very laid-back thing. I'm sorry that there were no call-outs. I'm sorry we
went jumping up and down.
We weren't jumping and down. I'm sorry we don't really dislike anyone, you know, very strongly or anything, except, you know, kufr and shirk and enemies of Islam and people who oppress people. But other than that, generally speaking, we've had a nice, calm conversation. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from all of us.